Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker tonight, John Whitty. John originally came from old New South Wales, which means we may have been on the same island, could have been at the same time, and he's currently a senior lecturer and program coordinator of the Master of Project Management at USQ. He's actually based at Springfield campus, not Toowoomba. John publishes his research in the leading project management journals and is often invited to speak at conferences. He's a passion for project management, particularly for trying to keep the discipline intellectually honest by getting the facts of what's happening. So that'll be interesting. His talk tonight, called The Private Lives of Project Managers, is a culmination of some of John's research and hopefully will give us food for thought about some of the things that project managers do. So please join me in welcoming John Whitty.
Good evening. Thank you very much for coming along. I know it's not just me, Campbell, but the networking that you get out of such an event. Hopefully, I'm going to make this little piece that I've got useful and interesting for you. I call this Private Life of Project Managers. But first, as they say in good adverts, I'm afraid you have to have a little advert from me about USQ. So USQ, this is us. We're an endorsed program. We got some. Feel free to spend some time with us with a drink in your hand, talking to myself and Barry at the end of the evening about the program that we've got. We're not in Toowoomba. We're down in Springfield, about 30 minutes south of Brisbane. That's where we run our on-campus programs. If you get involved in our programs, then there's all sorts of aspects to it, things like study desks. It's all delivered online, but you can also attend our campus courses as well. We supply course notes, materials, not just PowerPoint handouts, so that students will read through study plans and so forth. And then we have these, what we call the on-campus workshops, where people spend sort of 3 intense, people say it's intense, it's a bit like drinking from a fire hose sometimes, but it's quite a good networking activity as well. And we also get people involved in research skills. One of my, in the introduction there, Georgina mentioned about keeping project management intellectually honest. One of the things I try to push, and we try to push through the program as well, is that it's evidence-based practice. So instead of just people's ideas and opinions, what we're looking for is evidence to support those. So the stuff that I'm going to go through this evening is based on evidence. And if you're interested, there's a paper that underpins this, and that comes out in a conference, which you can find it on my website, with all the links to the various authors and research that underpins this. So the private lives of project managers. Well, so what? The private life of project managers is really about a Darwinian approach to what project managers do. So that's what I've got. I've got my little evolutionary glasses. Right. So the idea is, and I use these metaphorically, of course, I don't walk around the campus with these on, but the idea is to now and again stand back from project management and try and see it from an evolutionary point of view. But so what? Well, at the end of this, what I want to try and do is give you a glimpse from an evolutionary perspective as to what project managers do. Project managers are not us. We are watching them. Okay? So for a moment, 20-odd minutes, step out of being a project manager and go with me on this little sort of journey to look at what project managers do. Because my research really focuses on the fact that a lot of the body of knowledge in project management is very homogeneous. It doesn't really draw on the subtleties of all the different aspects that you're involved in projects. It's very general. And it would be useful, more useful for individual project managers if they were much more specific. But that's not allowed to happen So one of my arguments is I think that the body of knowledge of project management should be taken away from professional institutions and it should be given to the practitioners. An open source body of knowledge. Now, that's not where I'm going this evening. I throw that one out as a little bit of a teaser. But what I'm doing here is showing you the evidence that underpins the reasons why we should go this way. So, if you are managing a project, capturing the moment when you're managing a project is hard. And if I walked into your office today and said, what are you doing? Are you managing a project right now? Is this you managing a project right now? It would be hard. No, it's me drinking a cup of coffee, Joe. No, it's me. I'll turn Facebook off for a second. So it would be hard to capture because if you are a carpenter, I can capture when a carpenter is doing carpentry. There's certain cues that hangs around it. For instance, there's a lot of wood around the carpenter, usually, and they've got a utility belt and some sort of power tools. The same sort of thing with the chef. There's a high incidence of chefs in commercial kitchens. We know where to find them. We can recognize them. There's cues about who's the chef, who's the kitchen aide. They wear certain whites. You go into a pharmacy. You can tell the pharmacist from the pharmacy tip. They dress differently. Sometimes they'll be the one that has a uniform and the others won't, or the other way around. But there are cues there to show you, to direct you to who is the person that's been the pharmacist. And again, you go to a doctor's surgery, there's a high incidence of GPs in doctor's surgeries, and you can recognize them because they usually they're the ones that have the stethoscope hanging around the neck, and other people don't. But, if you're managing a project, it's not so easy. And this is where the struggle begins. Because if you're working on construction projects, it might not, you might be able to sort of say, well, it's that guy in that ute, with that hat on, with that roll of paper, and he's not as dirty as everybody else is. And the pointing and talking to people is the fact that he's going through managing a project. But then, let's take a snapshot into somebody's office here. They're running a project. Who's the project manager? What's the difference between somebody updating their Facebook and updating Microsoft project schedule? Or writing emails to people with task lists and so forth? Here, we've got a Scrum team. I think it's a Scrum team. They may be playing cards, I don't know. But no, they are actually working on a project. There's lots of post-it notes going on there, so there must be a project. And then here's somebody giving a presentation to stakeholders. Or are they? I don't know. Well, they are actually. But it's not so obvious that part of that job there, that role, is managing a project. So there's a struggle here, and that is to be seen, to be recognized, and to somehow offer cues that that's in fact what you're doing. It's also easier in an environment like this, and I know construction people will perhaps argue this point with me, but it's probably easier to show progress in something like the top one, as opposed to the one on the bottom. You can physically go up and touch it, whereas it's less tangible in other projects. Again, hard to show progress, hard to show the project management program. So, what I want to do is I'm going to look at some aspects of the project manager's work. I'm going to look at their habitat. Remember, we are project managers. Okay? We're going to look at their habitat, their individual behavior, their competitive behavior, how they signal their fitness, their usefulness in the job, how good they are, how they camouflage, things, they camouflage the messiness. It's the real world of managing a project. How they use mimicry to look the part, and also their cooperative behavior. But, to begin with, I need to tell you about these glasses. They are rather specific. It's a Darwinian approach. Now, to do that, I need to talk about selection and how it applies. First of all, I'm going to talk about how it applies to ideas. But before I do that, I need to talk about how it applies to us, biological beings. So I'm going to take us a quick little step through that. The Darwinian approach, it wasn't Darwin that invented in any such way evolution. Evolution, the idea that the species change over time, has been around for a long time. What he did do is he did come up with a mechanism about how it works. But that was the major stepping stone. The mechanism by which it grows is selection. Selection takes place. Now, biological organisms reproduce, so do ideas. They reproduce and spread to a community of people. Heredity. There is some traits from previous ones that get passed on to others. The same thing happens with ideas. Ideas progress and develop. And sometimes within those ideas are small traces of previous ideas that they've evolved from. Variation. You and I take some ideas and they change over time slightly. When a species reproduces, biological reproduction isn't perfect. When a couple have offspring, there are slight differences each time, slow variations. And the interesting thing is that when those variations take place, they add to the survivability of it. And there's a selecting agent. Humans, prey, predators, mates, or the environment. So, let me romance you into this idea then by talking about things we're familiar with, and then I'll move us on to new ground. In the 1600s, cows looked like that. On the right-hand side, that's how they look. They're almost like others with a head on. Because we have, over time, selected them. The better cows that produce more milk, we breed from those. The ones that don't, we don't breed from. And this is domestic. This is artificial selection that's going on. These cows produce 60 litres of milk a day. Can you imagine that? That's over 100 metric tons a year. Sorry, in a lifetime of a cow. Pigs, same thing. We've produced them almost walking cuts of meat now. But the point is through selection, we've designed this. We've built it. Okay? We've kept the ones that look more like this and bred from them, and the ones that look more like this, we don't let them breed. Same thing for dogs. Same thing for vegetables. You go to the supermarket and you look at carrots. Carrots don't look like that naturally. Carrots look like this. And over X amount of years, depend on the size, taste, and the colour of the taproot, we keep the ones that look bigger, we breed from them, discard the rest. And we keep on going, and we keep on going until eventually you end up like cows. So that's domestic. That's a domestic form of selection. That's humans doing the selection. Now, selection takes place in the wild. So we've got the cheetah chasing the gazelle. Now, cheetahs have to run fast because they have to eat gazelles. And gazelles have to run fast because they run away from cheetahs. But what happens is this, is that there's a driving force that's moving on all the time. They are linked together. And this is another important aspect. I want just remember this as a sort of a cue, really. These two are linked together because the fast-running cheetah gets to eat. But the slow-running one doesn't. So they die off. The ones that can run fast and catch their food, they get to survive. The gazelles that run fast, they get to survive. The ones that are slow, they get eaten. So they get removed out of the gene pool. So can you see there's this chase to speed? Now there's a natural limit to this because to get speed, you need to reduce weight. To reduce weight, you need to reduce bone mass and so forth. So there comes a point where the bones can be so light that they fracture, and that has survival implications. So there's a natural limit. But the point I'm trying to make here is they're linked together. Okay. Now, there's another form of selection that goes on, and that's, well, in the competition for mates. So males in a natural system, I'm including humans as well, compete for access to females. Okay? Now, if you're if you eat grass and you don't have sharp teeth, then you develop over years, in order to compete for females, weapons. That's what the horns are used for. If you have teeth, you're a carnivore and you eat meat, then you don't need weapons, you need shields. So things like the lion's mane develops. The reason for the lion's mane is when it's fighting with another male, you need to stop teeth from biting him. So features can get driven because of competition. When there aren't so many predators around, there's another form of selection which takes place. I'm going to weave this in to the project managers at the moment. And that is this form of sexual selection here. Now what happens is that the male needs to make as much display as it can to attract the attention of the female. Much like project managers trying to attract the attention of senior managers. And what happens is the colours and the performance that they put on pushes certain physiological buttons in the female and it attracts it to them. So they mate with it. Now, because this plumage, this fanciful colour, is mated with this one, the genes that get passed on, the traits that get passed on, we're now locked in a direction. And the direction that's locked in is this. The male that gets born produces wonderful colours. The female gets born is attracted to wonderful colours. So can you see how they're locked together? And the direction goes in the direction of these plumage, this colour. If anybody's been fishing, caught crabs, sand crabs, you look at the female crab, it's brown, boring looking, with the male crab, fantastic colours. Now, here's the extreme of it, peacock's tail. Because the peacock's tail has been designed by, perhaps that's an unfortunate word, has been driven by peahen preferences. The peahen gets attracted to the plumage. It fires off little buttons here, and as it does, it produces, it causes, they get to mate, and then the offspring that are produced, one generates the tail, the other one has the preference for being attracted to the tail. They are locked together. Well, we do a similar sort of thing. You know, there's a couple out there speed dating, searching for certain preferences to select. And there's lots of studies that underpin this. If I did a quick little study here now, you know, you could see that people would have certain preferences for the males or certain preferences for the females. Female traits, youthfulness, physical attractiveness, cues. I didn't come up with this, okay? There's a lot of evidence for this. But there are cues. So how do we know? See, how do you know that if you go back to the peahen for a second, or the peacock, the peacock doesn't grow a tail because it attracts females. The tail is a byproduct of being a healthy bird. It costs a lot of energy to grow a tail. Right? So if you can grow a tail, you're fit and healthy. You're good at and the chances are you're good at reproduction. So that will have a knock-on effect. The ones that aren't don't get to reproduce. There are also cues, cues of the male's traits here. Ambition, earning, capacity, that's what females get attracted to. Looks, okay. The cues, status, resources. So, what I want to try and just summarize here for a second is that in this evolutionary process, the traits are locked together. There's a chase on. Also, there are certain cues that are given off. The cues for the peacock, the health is the health of plumage. The cues for people, you may not consciously be thinking of these, but study after study, we know we go to job interviews. But we know about that we need to dress smart, we need to act the part, we don't go in boardies and thongs. So we play along. Right? You look on any website and there's recommended styles for people to dress, to present themselves properly, to get in the door. We've all played that one. When you're applying for a job, we address the performance criteria as best we can. Keep all the good stuff in, drop all the bad stuff out. Okay, so the interesting thing is this, that when an organism gets selected, what gets passed on is the genes of that organism. Now, what that means is, the genes, little molecules inside us, inside the cell, what they do is they're the recipe for making the creature. And it's the recipe that gets passed on through time. We keep good recipes, Anybody cooks from their mother's recipes or whatever it may be. We keep good recipes, they're successful. Recipes that we have that aren't successful, we abandon. So this is what happens. As the main features get selected, so these genes that produce organisms, whether it's animals, humans or carrots, they get passed on into the future. So where would I find a high population of genes for producing peacocks' tails? I find them in a large community of peacocks. That's what they are. If you want to go and look for genes that produce fantastical tails, they're in a community of peacocks. That's where they reside. So, ideas have sex too. It was funnier when I thought about it. Oh, no, it's funny. Here we got two ideas mating. So we've got a phone and a camera, and we blend these things together until, today we have the technology to produce these things. It's hard to distinguish now whether it's a phone or a camera or whatever it may be. The point is that there are still vestiges of the phone and the camera in this. They're still there. We can trace it back. Okay? A little bit of the genes then, if you like, are still there. Now, we don't talk about genes when we talk about ideas. We talk about memes. So memes are the recipes and the instructions for concepts, behaviors, and practices. They're social replicators. Here's a popular one. It's the aeroplane. Now, what I really need to point out is this. The aeroplane is not the meme. The meme is the instructions of how to build it. And that's what gets passed on. Everybody's built one of these planes. You want to go building one of these? And everybody's shown a 6-year-old, and you were probably shown at 6 how to build one of these airplanes. 3 or 4 folds, and that's done. See, and it gets passed on. When I pass it on to my kids, and my kids will pass it on there. Where would you find the memes for building airplanes like this? You'd find them in most 6 or 7-year-olds, a lot of parents, scout leaders, all those sort of people that end up doing these sort of things. Now the interesting thing is another important aspect to this, is that this plane gets selected from lots of other planes. Now there's air conditioning going here, so I'm going to complain that it won't fly so well. But, okay, so there's my one plane, and here's my other plane. Now which one flies best? The second one. Do you know how to make the second one? Why don't you know how to make the second one? Because I'll tell you why, it's just too hard. I gotta watch a video about it like that. The instructions of how to make it, and that will glide across a room like this, lovely. But the interesting thing is, selection has taken place here not based on performance. Selection has been taken based on ease of passing on. Alright? So, it's just good enough, it flies, it entertains a 7-year-old, that's great fun, and that's all we need it for. Memes are all over the place. Remember, they are not the thing, they are not the object. The object, like genes, aren't you. Okay, you are a byproduct of it. It's almost like an unfolding origami, but it's done in skin. Okay? The same thing with a Queenslander house. So here's a version of it. Here's a modern version on the right-hand side. Both of them need painting every year. But we don't recognize the meme of a Queenslander by the features, by the veranda, by the arches and so forth. You see, here's the meme. The meme, where would you find it? It's in the builder. It's how to put these things together. Okay? It's the instructions of how we're about to go this, building the decking, and there are ways of decks and so forth, so that you can drive a truck under these things and pick them up and move them along. Now, I bet you could drive a truck under that one, but you couldn't of that one. So, the concept, we're looking at an idea, we're looking at something which evolves, but also there's a concept underneath that gets passed on. Now, where would you find the meme for building Queensland houses? You find it in a community builders, you find it in the textbooks within tapes, and so forth. Okay? So that's what the instructions of how to do these things, put these things together. So, I'm going to take all that stuff, I'm finished with that, and I will now apply it to the habitat and the behaviours of project managers. The habitat that project managers live in is a rather particular one. It's not a Jamaican one. I called it Projectistan. So, Projectistan is a particular cultural environment where project managers live. It's the environment we're in. We're in it now. Okay? And it's a certain cultural environment where benefits are bestowed on people who comply with the rules of Projectistan. You need to be awarded with things like the PMP or Reg PM derivatives of stuff that comes from the PMBOK guide, or that's to individuals, or to corporations who go through the exercise of being able to measure their project management performance capability and have a sort of a number attached to it. So rewards are bestowed on people who comply in this sort of way. Now, how do you recognize it? Well, there's all sorts of the language that people use, Prince 2, the methodologies that people have got, the words they drop in the conversation. They may be going through activities like building work breakdown structures or having project briefings or governance meetings. So there's the land of Projectistan. Unfortunately, it's spread to coffee shops and all sorts of places. That's where it seems to take place. Now, where can you find the gene for creating peacock's tail in a community of peacocks? Where can you find the memes for project management? You'll find them in a community of practitioners. You all carry them around. We're all carrying them around. They're also recorded in our books, in course lecture notes, in videos on YouTube or whatever they are, presentations at conferences. The institutions themselves, of course, they propel these memes, and then there's the one solid one which I've sort of coloured in there, which is the PMBOK guide, which is a powerful driver through the various mechanisms it has of capturing, holding on and passing on these memes. So, we're going to have a look at some in a second. Individual behaviour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to have a go at a quick research question. Okay. So you've all got a blank piece of paper. You don't need to fold it into an airplane and throw it at me. That's a different thought. What I'd like you to do is this. I'd like you to take your piece of paper and a pen, put it on something that you can write on, and then I'd like you to have a go at this activity. And I've got 2 minutes really for you to have a go at this, so there's a bit of thinking time, but the key is to really get this going. Has everybody got a pen? Okay. So, the question is this. Managing a project is like, and I want you to answer it by drawing something. I do not want you to put a single word on that piece of paper. You need to draw it. Okay? Away you go. Managing a project is like, and draw it. No words. Alright, everybody got something? Now what I want you to do is just spend another half a minute. I want you to turn to the person next to you and just explain it to them.
We're a bizarre bunch of people, aren't we?
You'll notice that people see projects very differently to you. And the interesting thing is that when you look at the body of knowledge of project management, there is an enormous amount of homogeneity. You know, there's a lot of generalist type things, how a project should be presented. But then when you do this exercise, and I've been doing this exercise with people for years now, you find that there's, never mind the idea of having a complex project than a something else project. There's far much more difference and variety between the projects in this room, just in this little corner here, than there is between the people struggling to try and decide what is a complex project and what isn't. There are so many subtle nuances. I'm just going to try and draw a couple out for you. Has anybody drawn a creature, an animal of some sort? Yeah? Some sort of organic form. This one's anatomically incorrect, as you can see. It's an octopus with 9 legs. Where do you think the 9 comes from? The 9 areas? Yeah. Okay. This person told me that it was in this one, they were the project manager, that's why it was a smiley sort of face. Because it turns out right in the end, I think was one of the phrases that they used, and their sort of fingers and tentacles were into everything. Another person drew, the octopus comes up now and again. Another person drew this and they said, well, the project is like an octopus, it's sort of slippery, organic, you've got to be careful because you won't get stung. There's also a yin and yang type aspect that comes from these projects. And what I mean by that is there's some thrill and excitement. There's an up and a down. Some people draw roller coasters. Has anybody drawn those sort of type of things? Where there's a sort of like a racetrack, or it's like sort of like reading your stars. But this is what seems to happen. And the interesting thing is when you interview people who draw things like this, you start to find out that there's a thrill-seeking element to managing a project. There are similarities between this and computer gaming. When you design a computer game, you have to look for what's called moments of flow, where people are focused and they have a challenge to solve, and it's solvable, but only just. And then there has to be some back-off time, where they can calm down, move away, and then they want to go back there again. Right? Now you find there's selection going on here. You find that people, because you're self-selecting, will select themselves for those types of jobs. If you don't like that sort of job, that way of working or living, you don't stay in it for so long. You'll select out. Okay? So you end up with a population, a community of people who like working in this particular way. So, what I want to do is I'm going to give you a couple of tests now. I didn't tell you there was a test in this time. But what you need to do is you need to tell me what memes these are. Okay? What's that one? The iron triangle. Time, cost, quality. What's that one? Work, brain, and structure. Anyone? What's that one?
Cost.
Earned value. Yeah. What about that one? Gantt chart. Okay. The interesting thing about this one is that, and I've done some studies with this, the time, cost, quality triangle. If you ask people, what are the if you ask people what are the major drivers of projects, they say time, cost, quality. Do you know they actually do that? They actually do that. You can capture them on video, there we go. They draw it in the air. If they got something in front of them, they'll draw it on a piece of paper. But if they haven't, they'll draw it in the air. So there's quite a few of these memes. The one I just mentioned there, you see, it survives rather well. Look at this, look at this. The reason it survives, there's the aeroplanes. There's the aeroplanes. If I sat down with you and we spoke about one of the major drivers of your projects, you'd probably come up with something much more complicated than a triangle. But you can't draw as quick as you can a triangle. The triangle gets selected because it's easier. It's easy to pass on. If I'm asking you a question, because we're in the institute and a group of people, what are the major drivers of projects? You could draw it for me, let alone tell it. But actually, and again, if you delve into the literature, you'll find that it's much more complicated than that. So selection takes place. A lot of what we find in the PMBOK is a simple paper aeroplane. It's been selected because it's easy to pass on, not because it's necessarily right or performs well. Okay. Competitive behavior. So, I'm going to speculate here that there's 3 survival methods, and again this comes from my sort of research that I've done. 3 survival methods. So signaling, you need to display cues, advertise like the peacock, or I'm a good project manager. How do we do this? Mimicry of desired professional identity. There's a guy at Manchester University, Damien Hodgson, he's done some really good work in this particular area about people's professional identity in project management. And then camouflage. So these are the methods that project managers use to survive. That is, they camouflage this non-compliant behavior. Stuff's going wrong, and we try to keep it going. If you look at the literature, Lynn Crawford's done quite a bit on this. If you look at the literature and you're asking senior management what their perceptions of project management or project manager's competences are, you're looking for a trait like being organised, planned, being able to deal with the unexpected. So how do you identify those traits? Remember with the healthy peacock, how do you identify it? Well, because it grows a fantastic town. It's able to. It can divert energy to this. How do you know if somebody is good at planning, good at organising? They are good at dealing with, remember, we're not talking about long periods of time now to watch people. The turnover of people's jobs is quite small, short. So we need cues to identify this. And some of the cues are given by things like the Gantt chart, by these physical tools that we use. So time, planning, management practices, generally these are associated with positive perceptions of workplace performance. We know that the Gantt chart has a lot to do with this. A Gantt chart is a way of bringing projects, as somebody said, to the boardroom. It's a tool to be able to do that. And it's probably one of the most sort of icons, I suppose, of project management. And this was a paper by Harvey Mailer, going back quite a while, 2001, I think. So look at any job advertisement, and you look at some of the things that they're looking for. Ability to plan, organize, schedule, and coordinate multiple tasks. It's in them all. So somehow we need to be able to demonstrate this. And when you're working through that, addressing the performance criteria, you're coming up with evidence to do this. But when you're physically there, remember, it's not as simple as the chef and the pharmacist and the uniform. You need to somehow distinguish from others. Just as an interesting, I was talking about gestures, triangle. Did you know there's a Gantt chart gesture? And people do this. Watch it. See it? See, watch it again. Right? When people talk about Gantt charts, they do this. It seems to come along with a Gantt chart. Anyway. Okay, so Gantt charts are an interesting thing because when you talk to people about Gantt charts, and in confidence, by the way, when you talk to people in confidence about Gantt charts, you find out that a lot of people don't actually use Gantt charts to manage projects. There's a lot of people nodding under them here. Now, the interesting thing is well, what are we using for then? Well, if you start talking to people, you get these sort of results. So the top one there. I couldn't imagine talking to a client without having a Gantt chart to show them. I think I look really unprofessional. Everybody expects me to carry one. I got to the stage where I just draw one to keep the peace. And the interesting part before that, he said about, you know, he started off talking about a magician. He said, oh, everybody expects a magician to carry a wand. So that's my wand. If I want to make everyone happy, I just get out the Gantt chart, point the bits I know lots about, and then I can get back to managing the project. Okay, I can honestly imagine. Can you honestly imagine me turning up to a progress meeting without one? You went on to talk about, you know, it would be professional suicide. When you ask people what words do they associate or emotions do they associate with a Gantt chart, they come things like order, being organized, control, methodical, systematic. Frustration is an interesting one. Frustration in the fact that their Gantt chart doesn't look like their project is. Right? And hope is in the hope that their project will look like their Gantt chart. Okay. So, here's a rendition of the peacock, and based on what I've said so far about cues, giving cues, here's my rendition of the project manager. Now, I'll just stay on this little picture for a second. It's interesting, when you're walking around conferences next, and you meet people from Microsoft, or people from Primavera, whatever they are, and they're telling you about the new features on the Gantt charts, ask yourself the question, why are those features there? Who is selecting them? Are they being selected because they are helpful in delivering the project? Or are they being added there because they are helpful in displaying, from the project manager's point of view, to senior management what's going on? You know, I write a number of papers on project management, right? But the people who, and I get caught up in writing the paper and sort of what's going on. And I find that the people who write blogs have a brilliant, they summarize my papers better than I summarize them. Right? And one guy put a summary on one of these papers around this topic, and basically he said, it seems that from this, that the Gantt chart is being used by the project managers to manage their managers, not manage the project. Now that's not saying that everybody does that. But what I'm saying here is that there's behavior going on like this. Okay? And it will drive the structure of how Gantt charts look. Like the preferences of the peahen drives the structure of the town. Camouflage. Camouflage. So camouflage and mimicry, they are human distinctions. And you can sort of, you need to sort of pull these apart really. But what I mean by camouflage here is that it's camouflaging what's really going on. So it's creating an environment which looks as if, one participant in the study summed this up, and they said it was rather like, I felt that I was a swan on the top with feet going like anything behind the scenes. But also keeping that away from senior management. Not necessarily because I wanted to sort of, well, first of all, I wanted to present a good image of myself. I don't want them to see that I'm managing chaos. But also that they don't need to know that. So if you ask people, my manager doesn't really, I'll let you read these, I won't read them through. I like this one. I find it beneficial to keep some information back and let it go at the right time. Okay, so you know, the interesting thing here is, and what I'm trying to point out is that Projectistan, the pressure that's put on project managers, drives them. They're not doing this deliberately to fool or conceal or deceive people. This is behaviour being driven in order to survive. Mimicry. I'm sure those teeth aren't really that white. Mimicry is about presenting a particular image about oneself. And there's a lot of literature which looks at the topic is called impression management. But mimicry in the natural world takes the, here's a butterfly, well camouflaged, right? But it's done it by mimicking a leaf. See now, butterflies can be broken down into two categories. One that tastes good and ones that don't. Right? Now, if you're a butterfly that tastes good, you get eaten a lot. So the ones that aren't easily seen get left behind and not eaten. And if you're left behind and not eaten, you're left behind for a reason, and that is because you're hard to see. Now, that then ends up in the gene pool of these butterflies, driving them towards looking like their environment. So they start to mimic the environment, the camouflage perfectly. The ones that taste bad, poisonous, well, they get the creatures that eat those, they stop eating them. They learn to identify. Again, they get wired in the fact that eating this type of butterfly causes you to die, be sick, whatever it is. So they stay away. The ones who die, remember, don't get to breed. Right? So the trait of avoiding the colourful butterflies gets to be passed on. So what you end up is sexual selection takes over, and you get these fantastic plumage on the butterfly wings again to attract the female. Right? So this gets locked in. Now the interesting thing, the really, really interesting thing about this, you see how interesting it is that you don't have to taste bad to look this good. If you just accidentally have to have fantastical colours and you look like something that tastes bad, you can get all the benefits of surviving, but still taste good. Right? So this one has survived by not mimicking its environment, but by mimicking something which is poisonous. The point here I'm trying to get at is you don't have to be, the whole idea of mimicry is you don't have to deliver. You just have to look good enough. I struck a code here. Right? You just have to look good enough just to get selected. Now, of course, this turns out in project management in lots of different ways. It's much more. It's much more than just being dressed in a suit. It's about complying, and sometimes, as this person has put here, I'll flick the rest of them up because I'm running out of time. But sometimes just sticking to the methodology in the company and looking as though you're going along with things, even though it is a waste of time because you know it actually doesn't deliver much, does have survival advantages over going against it. And the last one, cooperative behaviour. Well, you see in a natural environment, again, herding, flocking, shoaling, there are advantages in this behaviour. That behaviour gets selected over time. It's pretty good at fighting off predators, because you can confuse predators. It's pretty good for finding food, and it's pretty good for finding a mate. So project managers have this shoaling behaviour, if you like, this cooperative behaviour. And the interesting thing that happens with this cooperative behaviour is when people get together and they form these institutes. You see, one of the things these institutes do, and I'm fully aware I'm speaking at an institute talk, is that they perpetuate passing on, or they pass on these means. And they're a mechanism, a social mechanism for doing this. But the interesting thing, and I suppose the good thing for individual project managers, the benefit that they get, is it homogenizes the means that are out there. Any bizarre idea that pops up about managing a project quickly gets nipped in the bud because it gets swamped by the rest of the other ideas that are out there. So it actually keeps, by having these groups like this, it actually keeps the environment quite stable. So, and if you look at one of the institutes, the UK Institute, the Project Management Institute in the UK, they're going towards chartered status. So again, this is one way of locking in the role of project manager. That's me. That's how I hope a little bit of a taster of looking through my lens at project management. We can go back to being project manager. And just a glimpse of how you apply that to the habitat, the competitive behaviour, and of course the performance. Thank you.
Okay, any questions that you'd like to ask John?
You touched at the start on an open source PEMBOK.
Yes.
Is that like a media type PEMBOK? Is that what you mean?
Yep. That's right. Yeah. So the idea is, here's a good example. If you go, if you search on the web, there's a website called Patients Like Me. And Patients Like Me is for people who suffer from all sorts of various syndromes. And you go along, you log on, you have a profile. And what they found is people dump a ton of data, you know, what their medication is, indications they've got from interacting drugs and so forth, symptoms they have and so on, and they load that into the system. And then the engine that's behind it starts to look for patterns in similar sufferers, right? Now my idea would be is it would be more like that than Wikipedia. And the idea would be that people would log on to projects like mine, put a profile in there of various projects, and you can start to look for projects which are like yours, and to see whether those people have similar sorts of problems. And the interesting thing is when that happens, the body of knowledge starts to emerge out of it, comes out of it in itself. You haven't got an overarching corporate body controlling what fits into the book and what doesn't. So, like Wikipedia, but
Okay, that's an interesting concept. Any other questions? Those people with their certifications now, you'll be able to walk around with the people.
That's it.
Barry
Barry and I will be available to talk here, obviously me on this topic, and also about our programs once you're having a drink after. And also, I think you mentioned to the end of the IPMA conference here in Brisbane. So Barry and I will be at that conference as well. I've got a paper in, hasn't been accepted yet.
Well, we've certainly got plenty of food for thought, and I don't think I'll be able to look at it down about the same or share some of
That's it.
Let's think about that. So thank you very much for that, John. That was a really
Thanks a lot.
different look.
Ooh, I got a bag.